going into next session now, which is called the new data. And our first speaker, so there's one interesting thing I learned about him. So I don't know about you, but when I learned that about the NSA and all these things, the most depressing fact for me was that the NSA was able to kind of influence the code of RSA, which is one of the most important encryption companies on this planet. And Mikko, who's joining us now for a talk about digital security, declined his talk at the RSA conference. So I'm really proud that he's here. He's one of the foremost experts for cybersecurity, Mikko Hypponen. Hey. So, jetzt habe ich auch Mikko mal getan.
Thank you very much. I am Mikko Hypponen, and I've spent the last 23 years fighting viruses, Trojans, backdoors, spam, online crime as a whole. And during those years, of course, the world has changed. When I started analyzing viruses, they were spreading on floppy disks because we had no email, we had no web. Change is constant. And the best way to really fight these problems is to understand where the attackers are coming from. Like if you want to protect your organization against online attacks, you first have to understand who the attackers are. Like who are you trying to defend against? Because there's no point in trying to defend your organization or your own personal computers against an unknown attacker, as it's completely different to try to fight an attack launched by a criminal who wants to make money as opposed to an attack launched by a foreign nation state who wants to steal your secrets for espionage. And once again, it's completely different to be worried about anonymous, and it's completely different to be worried about state-run surveillance. So we first have to understand who the attackers are and how they are shifting as we go from one year to another. Well, the really simple picture, the way I split the attackers into main three groups is here. We have the ones who do the attacks to make money. And that's a very easy motive. I mean, everybody understands that if you can make money by writing viruses and creating banking Trojans and ransom Trojans, there's someone who will do it. That's the easiest motive to understand. But then we have the groups who are not trying to make money. Hacktivists, movements like Anonymous, where they are not trying to become rich with their attacks. They have a different motive, a higher cause, if you will, a political motive, or they want to protest. But frankly, to me, surprisingly, the biggest change has been that the governments entered the picture. If somebody would have told me 10 years ago that by 2014 it will be commonplace for Western democratic governments to create and deploy viruses and Trojans and backdoors and even actively use them against other democratic Western governments, I would not have believed that 10 years ago. And clearly, that's where we are today. And that's a pretty big shift. Sometimes it feels like we would be living inside a science fiction movie. So indeed, the criminal mechanisms are fascinating because online criminals are smart. Any new technology you might be hearing about, it's pretty guaranteed that there's an online criminal somewhere trying to already figure out how to use that technology in order to steal money. For example, cryptocurrencies like Bitcoins, Dogecoins, Litecoins, Namecoins. Fascinating technology. Absolutely fascinating. Very, very interesting. That's going to change the world as well. However, the first time I ran into cryptocurrencies was close to 2 years ago when we were investigating a botnet which was monetizing the infected computers by using them as a massive Bitcoin mining botnet. Since then, we've found tons of different Trojans which infect not just computers, but even Android-based phones and turned them into mining rigs, mining not really Bitcoin because it's so hard to mine nowadays, but things like Dogecoin. We are seeing very advanced ransom Trojans using uncrackable encryption, encrypting your hard drive, then demanding a payment from you in order to get your files back. And we are seeing very interesting new attacks against the Internet of Things. Some of these cases it's even hard to see today how on earth you could make money by infecting, I don't know, televisions or microwave ovens. But there's someone out there figuring that out already, and that is going to happen. We will see infected toasters. It's going to happen. Mark my words. I said that in 2014. We will see infected toasters. But like I said, the groups that are not trying to make money are much harder to forecast and much harder to foretell what they're going to do next. However, one thing that is comforting to organizations that are worried about online attacks or denial of service attacks or data leaks from one kind of a hacktivist group or another, one thing that is comforting is that these groups almost never act randomly. They don't pick their targets by random. They typically have a beef to settle. They're angry against an organization and they want to retaliate. And they just happen to do their protests in the online world instead of the real world. And that's different from criminals because criminals are very democratic. Online criminals don't really care who you are. They just want your money. For example, if it's a online crime gang trying to steal credit card numbers, they don't really care who you are. They don't care if you are a German user or Italian user or Danish. It doesn't matter. They just want credit cards. It doesn't matter if it's a home user or a corporate user. It doesn't matter where in the world the user is. Very, very democratic attacks. They target everybody. These guys don't target everybody. These guys pick their targets. They pick someone they want to hurt. And they typically have a reason for it. But when the internet came around, well, let's narrow that down. When the web came around, initially the powers that be completely ignored it. Of course they ignored it. Politicians could not have cared less about the web in 1994. And by the way, although the web just turned 25 years, it's been 25 years since Sir Tim Berners-Lee wrote the specifications for HTTP and HTML. The web really is 20 years old because I think we all here, I think pretty much everybody in this room got online to a website for the very first time in 1994. Maybe some of the younger ones in 1995 or 6. But for example, we started our website in 1994, in April 1994, so pretty much exactly 20 years ago. We're originally a Finnish company, and when we started our website was the 17th website in Finland. There was a bunch of universities which had a website. But then it just skyrocketed. And during these 20 years, what a massive shift. Like I said, originally, politicians and powers that be, the decision makers ignored it. Well, they don't ignore it anymore. They have realized just how important the internet and the web is shaping opinion, just how important we, the users, we, the citizens, find it. And nowadays, the politicians and the powers that be and the decision makers try to control it as much as they can. And they also try to use the internet as means of doing surveillance on us, the citizens. Actually, in very many cases, on us, not the citizens of their own country, but foreign users. Like we saw with the prison program, run by the United States, targeting the rest of the world. And one thing that's crucial to understand about the NSA programs targeting the rest of the world is that they are breaking no laws. It's perfectly legal for US intelligence to collect and look at our data when we, the foreigners, give our data to US services. It's perfectly legal. They have a law. Because we, the foreigners, we have no privacy rights in the United States. And this is a problem because we keep using American services all the time. So we are voluntarily giving away our data. When people started learning about these programs, many started feeling powerless. Like, what can you do? Yes, it's horrible, but what can you do? It's multi-billion-dollar intelligence agencies with this space-age technology. There's nothing we can do to fight them. And that's not true. That is not true. Point number one, this isn't right, it is wrong. Point number two, it can be fought. It can be fought with technical safeguards, like encryption and VPNs and anonymization services. But even more importantly, it can be fought with political movement. We shouldn't be worried about global internet surveillance. We shouldn't be worried about it. We should be outraged about it, because it isn't right. We did not build the internet to be used as a global surveillance machine. But that's what it's being used for. And it's being used for global surveillance under our watch. Like, this is the thing we're building and leaving for our children. And it's not right. Right now, superpowers, especially the United States, are treating the internet as one of their colonies. And we, the foreign users of the internet, we should treat them as our masters. That's how bad it is. So Mr. Snowden is a powerful man. We should be grateful for him for the revelations he's shown to us. Very powerful man, almost as powerful as this man. And Mr. Obama is pretty savvy in technology, pretty high-tech. He understands how the internet works. He follows these things. He mentioned in one speech recently how 6 years ago only 5% of the world's smartphones were running on an American operating system. And he was happy to report that today that number is more than 80%. And he's right. And that also means that more than 80% of the world's smartphones are now legally under the surveillance of the United States. They can look at the data on those phones if they want to, without breaking any laws. And you can split the work of intelligence agencies like the NSA into two different groups. You have targeted surveillance, and then you have blanket wholesale surveillance. Targeted surveillance is when they have someone they want to watch, and they know who it is, like they have a name, or at least they have an identity of sorts. And then you have untargeted, global, blanket wholesale surveillance, where they target everybody. And the main reason for doing that is that they can. It's technologically possible to do that today, thanks to the internet and to the mobile phones. And just because something is technically possible doesn't make it right. And I personally have no problem with targeted surveillance. I understand the need for that. Which means I have no problem with this. I have no problem with the US intelligence agency listening to the phone calls of Chancellor Merkel. She's a legitimate target. She's the Chancellor of Germany. She must understand that she's a target of surveillance. She might have been surprised that it was Americans listening to her phone calls. Nevertheless, she's a valid target. My mother is not a valid target. She is a valid target. There's a difference here. So targeted surveillance, not very nice, but understandable. Global blanket wholesale surveillance, like reading the emails of my mother. That's not right. And there's a difference between Angela Merkel and my mother. They don't even look the same. And we are giving away our deepest secrets every day. You go to Google and start Googling for something. And of course, Google will nicely give you different options, proposals, what you might be searching for. And these are based on things other people have searched for before you. And you can easily come up with really nasty examples on how people go online and give their deepest secrets to the internet. They tell the internet secrets they wouldn't tell anyone else. And whoever is monitoring the internet gets these secrets and can use them against you forever. Our families don't know us as well as the internet knows us. This is the problem. And whoever collects this information and keeps it can control us anytime in the future, a decade from now, 20 years from now. This is the problem. Even if you have no secrets, you still have secrets. We all have secrets. It's called privacy, and privacy should be built in. Privacy should be non-negotiable. We shouldn't even get into the discussion about the need for privacy. I have no secrets, yet I'm not really interested in giving away all my information to an intelligence agency, especially a foreign intelligence agency. So it's really easy to criticize the United States. But in some ways that's not fair either, because if we would give the very same power USA now has on the rest of the world to another superpower, let's say to China or Russia, they would certainly misuse it much worse than what USA has done. They just happen to have all these massively popular services that we all use every single day. So that gives United States unfettered access. That puts USA on the wire. And a very easy way of seeing this is a very simple test. Step number 1, name 5 large American internet companies. And that's not a very hard test at all, like Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple. There's 5. Not hard. Repeat with Europe. Name 5 similarly large European internet companies. And you see the problem. Yes, there are startups here. Yes, there's a handful of companies. And yes, there is one large company, software/network company in Europe, and that's SAP. But SAP is as large as the 10 next largest European software companies combined. Think about that. We've been failing for the last 10 years in creating internet or software companies to Europe. So it's no wonder we keep using American services, because there are no European webmails or European search engines or European social media. And when we have the rare European success stories, they end up being sold to US companies. And that's what we should change. And I'm hopeful we can do that change. I'm hopeful just looking around this room and speaking to people in events like Next 14. And that's my message. We should move as much of the startup industry away from Silicon Valley to Europe. Because right now, the smart young people in Europe, the very first thing they do is that they first move to California and then they start up their company. That's not what we want. We want a European startup industry. And through that we can fight global wholesale blanket surveillance. Thank you very much.
Stay with me. Ask some questions. So you're Chief Technology Officer of F-Secure. I was wondering if I can trust you. So as I learned, I mentioned it before, that even the RSA algorithms are kind of influenced by the NSA. So what about all the antivirus companies?
That's actually a tough question, because almost all antivirus technologies are running on the user devices with root privileges or admin privileges, which means they can do whatever they want. And almost all antivirus products are closed source. So you can actually go and look at what they're doing. So very, very valid question. The answers I can give to you aren't very good answers. Like, yeah, we've been in this for 27 years, we've never broken our promise. But that's not really a very good answer, is it? And you're not the only one worried about this, because there's a freedom of speech group operating from the Netherlands called Bits of Freedom. And they actually sent an open letter to, I think, 18 antivirus companies in the world asking, well, they weren't asking whether we can trust you. They were simply asking, have you ever been approached by your own government, like the antivirus vendor's own government, asking the antivirus vendor to whitelist some specific piece of code? Basically asking if you've opened the door for Trojans of your own governments. And I think something like only 70% of those companies responded.
Did you respond?
We responded because we have a very easy response. No, we haven't been, and no, we wouldn't.
So there was one question, have you ever been approached with a request by a government requesting that the presence of specific software is not detected? So the answer was?
Our answer is a resounding no. And we actually made this statement originally in 2001, right after the 9/11 attacks. We decided that we will not be making our decisions, what we block and won't block, with political merit. It's a technical question, like, is this malware or not? And governmental malware is malware.
But no government ever called you?
No government has ever contacted us asking us to whitelist their malware.
What happened to your business after the Snowden files? So did it increase, double, triple, or just steep? Or?
Snowden revelations must have had an effect, negative effect, on US-based companies, not just security companies, but lots of other industries as well. For European software vendors and security vendors, it's been making our job easier, because especially neutral countries, like Finland is seen as a very neutral country, and when we can offer secure cloud storage services or secure VPNs and point out that our data centers, by the way, are in Finland, that's something which actually is a very good point nowadays. So European companies have an edge right now, and we should use that.
I'm wondering why we didn't manage to build basic security measures into our basic products at all, so we don't have encryption in our email clients. I know that there's the possibility to do that, but nobody uses it. My mother doesn't know how to do that. Why is that so?
It's not just a failure. We've actually had lots of successes. In fact, most emails actually are encrypted, not just at the level people think that they are. Of course, they are encrypted at the trunk level. Let's say you use a webmail. It's under SSL, so it's encrypted in transit. In fact, most of the web traffic, very, very big part of the web traffic today is encrypted, and that's a great initiative. That really helps. Helps against criminals, helps against all kinds of attacks, helps also against governments. But the reason why we still don't encrypt our email when we send it from our computer is the difficulty of key exchange and lack of standardization in getting that done, which is actually a poor answer as well.
Yeah, do we need a law to do that? So there could be an EU initiative to just encrypt your stuff, you know.
No. We need a law that everybody should buy European security software.
It's good for you. Yeah. Okay, you answered. Last question. Why David Hasselhoff? Okay, so you have maybe a wonderful session tomorrow with David Hasselhoff, is that correct?
That's correct.
Can you tell us something about it? Why do you do that?
David Hasselhoff is a personal hero and a real-world fighter for freedom, and we will be nominating him as our freedom ambassador tomorrow when we launch our manifesto.
Okay, so he's a personal hero for you?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I was born in 1969, so when Knight Rider came out, I was right in the right age.
So if you happen to be at Republica, you should go there. Thank you very much for joining us. Pleasure.